Welcome to Alcohol and Anime Night, the show that gets you drunker, the show that gets you fatter, and the show that's going to cost you thousands of dollars in tires. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Alcohol and Anime Night, everybody. My name is Scott, and tonight we have a very special episode. It is the review of a very old man anime, Initial D. And I've been waiting to do this one for quite some time. We're here in the shop next to some of my old cars here, and I thought it was a fitting place to do the recording. Also, in my actual studio, there's stuff going on, so I figured, why not do it out here? And it's got a weird echo, but I think we can deal with it. So it's going to be a slightly different format than normal. It's going to be a little longer form. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible, but this is a subject matter I'm very passionate about, and so I hope you'll bear with me a little bit while we dive into the lore of Initial D. Before that, though, let's crack a beer. It's Alcohol and Anime Night, and tonight I have the Mind Haze IPA. We're not going to be driving, so it's okay if I have a few sips on this beer. I'm not a huge IPA fan, but my friend Cal dropped by and had this Mind Haze IPA, told me I should give it a go. I'm going to oblige, so kanpai. Let's get this story started. Okay, that's not that bad. I'm not an IPA fan, but hey, kanpai. Let's get going. So Initial D is a story, first and foremost, about street racers. Now, I want you to get all notions of neon lights painting the ground and girls in short skirts, waving on the side of streets and stuff like that. This ain't Fast and Furious. This is something far, far cooler. Now, by the way, I don't want to knock Fast and Furious movies. I watch the shit out of those, and so no hate to any of that. But this is very different. Even though it came across and came out right around the same time, it was the perfect storm for something like this to come out. Now, the manga itself came out in about 1995, and it was a shonen-style manga, meaning, of course, that it's marketed mostly to young boys and young men. And it was written and illustrated by Shuichi Shigeno, who continues to do so throughout the entire manga. I have here a copy that I picked up while I was abroad, and it's actually number 40, the Japanese language version of it. I want you to just take a peek here at the illustrations and get an idea that the character illustrations aren't particularly fantastic, but what I want you to look at are the vehicle illustrations. Look at the detail on those, and you can get very clearly a sense of what's being focused on in this particular manga. This is a keepsake of mine. This is the Japanese language version, so I'm not great at reading most of it, but that's a bit of a keepsake. I'm going to hold on to it for some time. Now, let's get back to the story. Now, there's no neon lights, there's no bumping music and police chases and anything like that. None of that nonsense. This is just straight up racing, illegal street racing, but really never the police get involved at all, really. People are quite respectful of it on all accounts. Now, the first arc follows our hero, our protagonist, Takumi Fujiwara, and Mr. Weird Lips himself. His name is Itsuki. Now, what it really covers is this first arc. It follows a pair of high school students who are attempting to be part of this car club, this racing team called the Akina Speed Stars. And the Akina Speed Stars are a small team, and they defend their home course. Now, what is the home course? The home course is what they call these up and downhill mountain passes, otherwise known as toge. Toge mountain passes are where they do their illegal street racing, and they do a great job of making it incredibly safe for what they're doing. And the Akina Speed Stars defend Mount Akina. Now, Mount Akina is not a real place. However, Mount Haruna is a real place, and it is the identical, it's just a thinly veiled reference. So you can go up, you can look on Google Maps for Mount Haruna, and it's that exact course that they show on the anime. How do I know? Well, I've been there. I've been there and I've driven on it, and it's incredible. It's amazing. There are other courses referenced throughout the entire anime, including Mount Akage, which again you can go to. You can just go there and drive on it if you want, and it's fantastic. You'll have an amazing time, and it's beautiful. You'll never be able to quite drive the way they do in the anime, though. I promise you that. However, I digress a small amount. Now, that is where we get into our characters. Now, we've already mentioned my protagonist, Takumi. There's also Bunta, his dad. He's a single dad. He's doing his best. He's probably, in my opinion, one of my favorite characters. Now, I am going to warn you just a little bit. I'm going to have a few spoilers here. They're not crazy spoilers. The show goes on for many, many seasons, so it's impossible to really not spoil everything. But I am going to have a couple of spoilers here, more than normal. So I really encourage you to watch this, but I'm going to be as careful as I can. I'll be as vague as I can. So if you're like, why didn't he talk about that more? It's because I'm trying not to spoil it. So we've got Bunta, we've got Natsuki, who is a love interest in this show. What would an anime be without a love interest? And she is some thought that has a daddy, and I'm not going to get any further into that because it spoils some things. Then there's Iketeni. He's their senpai. He has an S13. And there's the hot Takahashi brothers. They're like the Rotary brothers. So anyway, throughout this entire thing, you're going to notice that they refer to the cars by their chassis codes or numbers. Like the main car in the story is called the 86, also known as the Hachiroku. Hachiroku literally meaning 8-6. Like it's literally Hachiroku. And that's what that means. And there's tons of them. FD, EG6, R32, Evo 8. And this is the chassis codes of the cars. So it basically tells you exactly what model that car is and make and model. Think of it as like the weeb codes that you have in your notebook, those little 6-digit codes. We all know what they are, you dirty, dirty weebs. Anyway, now what really separated this from any other thing that had been done in the past is that it featured realistic concepts from motor racing and drifting. If you don't know what drifting is, it's essentially when you induce a car into a controlled oversteer. You'll see it a lot in rally racing. It's very popular there, but you may have also seen it in competition where it's essentially like figure skating where they're trying to get extreme angles and things like that. In this case, they're using it for racing, and in many cases it is faster. Most of the time it's not, but that's a whole other thing. Now, like so many of these shonen stories, it does follow a kind of monster of the week type formula, meaning that instead of a new monster to fight, it's going to be a different car. So some guy shows up with, oh, this guy's got a front-wheel drive car that's really lightweight. Okay, so he's the monster of the week here. Oh, this guy's got an all-wheel drive turbo car, but it's really heavy, and how's he going to deal with that? Oh, this guy is an expert at racing in the... And then there's all these different kind of monsters of the week that come in, and what they do is they kind of start slowly introducing you into motor racing concepts, like oversteer, for example. And for those who don't know about things, such, like if they're complete idiots about cars, which is completely fine, you learn a lot. And I've sat with people watching this and watched them learn about cars, about the mechanical aspects, about some of the optional add-ons, modifications, and just racing terms in general. And they're really kind of generous and kind of spoon feeding it to you. And the reason is that the device to do that is perfect because the protagonist of the story doesn't know anything about cars. So so there's always an opportunity for somebody to be explaining it to him, which in turn may be explaining it to you, which I think is great. Now, let's talk about the animation. The manga, as I just showed you not too long ago, and the anime share very similar animation styles where they kind of intentionally pay more attention to the cars than they do the characters. Now, that might actually point out some things that the author was trying to do intentionally by saying that the cars themselves actually may be more characters and they want to focus on it. And the cars themselves have their own almost personalities, so to speak. Not in a weird way, but The cars have losses and gains, and you connect to those cars. You will start referring to the cars. You're like, oh yeah, in the FD versus 86 race, you know, and you're referring to the cars, not necessarily the characters, which is very interesting. How maybe people who are maybe more inclined to liking mechanical things like myself start to associate the kind of the non-human objects, and that's pretty interesting. If you watch it with somebody who's a gearhead, they're probably going to see it in that way. And despite those lacking character illustrations, the stories attached to the characters themselves are very interesting, and you care about the characters, not just the main characters, the ancillary characters, the rivals that come and visit. You care about them all, and very few characters, I'd like to point out, very few characters in the story are portrayed as kind of evil or irredeemable. There is oftentimes very much a camaraderie, and I really like that part of the story, that there's no one who's really, very few people are just kind of set up to be just villains for no reason, because they're regular people, and that's a thing that you don't see that often, if I'm honest. In 2002, hoping to kind of cash in on the Fast and Furious trend, Tokyo Pop, who you might know as kind of the defunct manga, and I believe they did some on anime as well, they released and retranslated the Initial D series for US audiences. So they brought the manga out, they re-released those, and those were available at bookstores everywhere. They sold very well. They retranslated it, fixed a few things, and in the anime they actually kind of redubbed it, put some different music and things on there, which I'll get to later. Notoriously, they changed him from a tofu delivery driver to like a pizza delivery driver, which people were furious about. I only saw that in this kind of research to do this video. I only ever watched the dubs of it, and my copies were very likely some like illegal Chinese copies. I didn't know. I received them as gifts from a website called like discountanimedvd.com, which is long since defunct. I suspect that they're all bootlegs. Nonetheless, I never had the opportunity, or shall I say the misfortune, of hearing the dubbed version. So I do recommend that original subtitled version, of course, and there's some really great stuff in there. What sets this story apart from being just a story about people who race cars is the lesson aspect. As the story progresses, certain types of vehicles, equipment, techniques, they're all discussed, and at some point a character will explain why this or that has its advantages or disadvantages. It's an excellent way for somebody who knows very little about cars and racing to get a great primer on the lingo and kind of understand that vocabulary. It takes a couple of volumes, it takes a little while in the show to get going. It's a bit of a slow burn. But once it hits, you're going to be hooked, and you're going to want to know what happens next. You're going to want to know how far it goes. Now, the good news is there is plenty of content for you. If you like this show, you will have no shortage of content to watch. And while today's viewers would probably vomit into their N95 masks at the animation style for that time and the computer graphics, you got to realize that was excellent for the time. And now the good news is that they have re-released and re-updated that, and I'll get to that a little bit later too. This year, automotive titan Toyota did a full tie-in anime commercial for their GR86 sports car, including a cameo from Keiichi Tsuchiya himself. One thing I want to really talk about is the music that they used in this show. It is iconic. The music, I'm sure you've heard it before. Some of the music was a meme at the time, and it's a meme now. And you'll hear songs like Space Boy, and several of the, in fact, I believe all of the main title openings were done by a band called Move, M.O.M.V.E. And you can check them out on YouTube. Check out a couple of links from their music videos, which are really cool since they have a whole bunch of stuff that are Initial D references. They were clearly, it was clearly influential. I'm sure it helped their careers immensely. But check out the soundtrack. That, I gotta tell you, that music from Initial D was playing on the aftermarket CD decks on every wannabe drifter, drift king on the streets, including myself. And I still think I have a burned CD somewhere that says Initial D drifting music or something like that on it. Now, it is no coincidence that the incredible attention to detail was held so close to. And one of those reasons was that a legend in the racing and drifting community, Keiichi Tsuchiya, was directly involved and was a supervisor with the whole project, I believe from beginning to end. And if you don't know who he is, that is a deep dive. I had the opportunity to meet him in person when some of the very first drifting events came to the United States. He was here to kind of make sure that they popped off, and I had the opportunity to meet him, which was one of the greatest moments of my life, honestly. Now, let's talk a little bit about the modern day version of Initial D. So there has been so many versions of this. The different seasons are called different stages, like rally stages. And so I believe it goes all the way up to the 5th stage, plus some extra and bonus stages, which I'll get to just a little bit later as well. There's been dozens of video games, some really immersive arcade games, which one came out last year. So I mean, there's one out that came out in 2021, and they're immersive arcade games where you get in them and that it moves and everything. There are even versions, I believe, just in a few locations where you get inside the actual car and they move and there's a screen in front, and it's incredible. So Initial D to this day still has a huge influence on not only the anime and video game world. Now in the manga world, the mangas have stopped, but there is a sequel manga that has come out called MF Ghost. Which I'm not sure if it's like, what's this MF Ghost doing here? I don't know what, but it is a pretty good series. I had a chance to watch or read a few of the mangas, and it was really fun. It's a very modern version of it. The show itself has been rebooted with more contemporary animation. From about 2014 to about 2016, they did 3 movie versions of it, which have much better animation. And I will tell you, the length and breadth of this series, I'm only scratching the surface. The amount of products, the amount of, again, manga, anime, video games, merchandise, music, it touched just about everything. And for a person who loves cars like myself, this was an excellent way to introduce people into the car world and get them excited about it. I will tell you, I truly hope that you watch this anime and that you find a passion for automobiles like I have. It's going to cost you a lot of money, unfortunately, so I'm sorry about that bit. So you'll spend money on anime and on cars. But for those of you, I really hope that you can get involved with this. Now, as a special bonus, there was an extra stage OVA, which was actually, there was 2 of them, 2 OVAs, featuring Meiko and Sayuki, who were a pair of racers, 2 female racers that piloted a SIL 80, which I'll let you figure that out, what that is. They were an integral part of the story. And this extra stage actually just follows them on kind of their own adventures. And for the fans out there who are a fan of this channel, a fan of the lewd stuff, this maybe you could just watch this one. And if you want to see some anime boobies from the Initial D, I can promise you they are in that Initial D extra stage. So maybe watch that if you're not sure about the series. Kind of dip your toe in. There is no other nudity or anything like that throughout the series. I don't know. That is like the sole thing that they have it in. But I thought the fans of my channel might appreciate that little extra gem. So watch that one if you have the opportunity to, and you'll get a feel for what the story is like. That's really all I have for tonight. I really am just scratching the surface of what this incredible show is. I really want to know how this, if you are a fan of this show, please comment below. I want to hear what you think of it. Have you been to a drifting event? Have you done drifting in the past? Have you illustrated drifting cars? If this has touched you in some way, this anime, please let me know. Like, subscribe, do all the stuff, do all the things. It's been a pleasure talking anime with you. My name is Scott. Kampai.